This is the ASICS Superblast 2, one of the most anticipated running shoes of 2024. Now the ASICS Superblast 1 quickly became one of my favorite running shoes of all time, and the only question is, does the Superblast 2 live up to its predecessor? Now before I get into the review of the ASICS Superblast 2, I do want to give a quick disclaimer that I did purchase this shoe with my own money. I was lucky enough to actually get a pair before they all quickly sold out. ASICS did not send me the shoe. They will probably never see this video, so the opinions on the Superblast 2 are mine and mine alone. And then lastly, for reference when I'm talking about this shoe, I am 5'10" tall or 5'11" on a good day, and I typically weigh anywhere from 165 to 170 pounds. All right, so with that out of the way, I wanna get into the review of the ASICS Superblast 2. I purchased a US men's 10.5 standard for the Superblast 2. The shoe fits true to size. It weighs 268 grams. The stack height of the shoe is 45 millimeters in the heel with 37 millimeters in the forefoot, giving you an 8 millimeter offset or heel to toe drop in the shoe. And then the shoe retails on ASICS website for $200 in the US. All right, so now let's get into the updates of the Superblast 2. We'll start with the upper. ASICS now has what is a woven upper for the Superblast 2. And the first thing I will note about the Superblast 2 is that I think it fits a little more true to size when it comes to the overall upper on this shoe. The one thing I had a problem with the version 1, which wasn't a major problem, but there was a lot of volume through the forefoot for me. I just felt like there was a lot of room in my shoe that was unnecessary, but that's fixed with the Superblast 2, which is a huge improvement overall. If nothing else was changed from the upper, that alone would be enough for me to say that it's a big improvement. The tongue pretty much goes unchanged, or at least it feels unchanged. I'd have to go look at my version 1, but it's extremely similar to the version 1 of the Superblast. The lacing system is very similar as well. The one thing I will say is the heel counter feels a little bit better, as well as the ankle. There seems to be a little more plushness and cushioning through your ankle into the heel of the shoe. And then the other quick thing I will note about the upper before moving to the midsole is in terms of breathability. I do actually feel that the version 1 was a little more breathable than the version 2 upper. There were a few hotter runs in the summer right when I first got this shoe, where I had been running the week prior in the version 1 in the same type of temps, where I noticed my foot just got a little hotter through this midfoot and this forefoot area, where you see some more buildup along the outsides of the shoe in the version 2 that did not exist in the version 1. To be honest, like I said, the breathability is a little worse, but it's negligible at best. Like I said, my foot got a little warmer, but nothing crazy. I would say this upper is more in line with a traditional daily trainer upper. And overall, the changes that are seen through the Superblast 2 upper, I believe, are an improvement over the version 1. All right, so now on to the midsole of the ASICS Superblast 2. In version 1, there was Flight Foam Turbo in this upper part, and then Flight Foam Blast Plus, I believe, in the middle. It was either the Blast or the Blast Plus. And now with the Superblast 2, you have Flight Foam Turbo Plus up here in that upper part. And then you have Flight Foam Blast Plus Eco for this bottom part of the shoe. So a majority of the midsole is this new Flight Foam Turbo Plus, which is as I understand, like a PEBA based or PEBA style foam versus the Flight Foam Turbo, which is a nylon based foam in the version 1. But similar to the version 1 of the Superblast, I found that this shoe is extremely firm on step in, and it's one of those shoes that it just takes time to kind of break in and to turn into that shoe that I fell in love with, which quickly became one of my favorite running shoes. And last but not least, the outsole. This is probably the biggest change overall for me when it comes to the ASICS Superblast 2. So the dreaded holes from the ASICS Superblast no longer exist on the outsole. As you can see, there's some like indents within the outsole where those holes would have been. So basically on the version 1, what you had was the Flight Foam Blast Plus below, and then there was some cutaways to where you could see the Flight Foam Turbo underneath that. The biggest problem with that outsole was that rocks always got stuck in the shoe. So that is a huge improvement for the outsole. The second improvement for this shoe is that we now see ASICS grip rubber on the shoe. And one thing I can say, from run 1 of this shoe, I could immediately tell how much better this traction is than version 1. That was probably one of the biggest pitfalls of version 1 of the ASICS Superblast, was the traction just left a lot to be desired. It wasn't terrible, but I will say when there was days where it would rain or when I ran in the snow, I did question how stable the shoe was in terms of traction underneath my foot. And I always worried that I was going to slip and potentially fall and injure myself. With this, the ASICS grip rubber, that is no longer a problem. This rubber is extremely tacky on all of my outdoor runs as well as my treadmill runs. I could tell that the grip of this rubber is just so much better. It sticks so much better to either the road surface or the treadmill surface, even the dirt roads where maybe you kind of lose some of that feeling with this rubber. It still feels like it has amazing traction, and I'm not worried anymore about if I'm gonna lose my footing on rainy days. I haven't run in the snow yet, but I know that this will hold up extremely well in all conditions. And now also one last thing I do want to note, when you look at the overall outsole pattern when it comes to the rubber coverage, the rubber coverage is very similar to the version 1, so not much has changed there. The pattern is a little different than the version 1, but it is still very similar in the fact that you have rubber coverage on the lateral and medial side of the forefoot, as well as this kind of like middle trampoline thing that ASICS likes to call it, to help protect some of the foam that comes down and protrudes right here. And then you have some as well that moves through the medial and lateral side of your heel. All right, and so with all of that out of the way, how does the ASICS Superblast 2 actually feel on foot? Honestly, I was really excited when I heard that they were gonna put the Turbo Plus in the Superblast 2, because with the ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus, I believe it was, with the Flight Foam Turbo, that foam was pretty firm for a race shoe. And then when I picked up the Metaspeed Sky Paris with the Flight Foam Turbo Plus, the foam was a lot softer. It broke in super quick. Like, it was a complete overhaul from the Flight Foam Turbo. And I absolutely loved that shoe compared to the Sky Plus for the Metaspeed series. But when it comes to this shoe, I feel like a lot was the exact same with the version 1. So when I bought the version 1 of the Superblast, I bought it off of all the hype that people were saying, that it was kind of like an all-arounder, do-it-all shoe. It could do everything for your marathon training. It could be the one shoe for your rotation. And I remember getting the version 1 and stepping in and being like, yikes. This feels a lot like the Boston, like the Adidas Light Strike. It was super firm. I really didn't enjoy it, but it was a $200 shoe. So I kind of just gritted through it and was like, I'm gonna put the miles on this whether or not I like it. And then fortunately, that Flight Foam Turbo Foam broke in at roughly 50 to 75 miles. I don't really remember when it happened, but there was just a day where I was running with the shoe and I was a few miles into my run and I thought, I actually really like this. And I noticed like the pace was picked up, like everything just started to work. And then, like I said, it quickly became one of my favorite running shoes of all time. With the version 2, I had the exact same experience. So unlike what I've heard some other reviewers say, where it feels like a broken in version of the version 1, the version 2 does not feel broken in, or at least it did not to me. Now granted, like I said, I am 5'10", 165 pounds, so maybe they were heavier runners than me or maybe taller, I don't know. But when I stepped into the version 2, I was kind of worried because I had just finished running in the version 1 the day prior to getting this. I had a little over 400 miles on the version 1, so that shoe was well more than broke in, and it could have gone even further. I think it could have gone to like 600 if I really wanted to push it. And I stepped in this shoe thinking it was gonna feel like that shoe, and immediately thought, oh no, I really regret my decision on going with version 2 because I just bought an expensive dud of a shoe because it felt like a brick. It was extremely firm. It really felt like there was no give at all in the midsole. It didn't feel broken in. It didn't feel like the Flight Foam Turbo Plus that I was feeling in my Metaspeed Sky Paris. It felt like the version 1 all over again. And so I will say that it took about 50 miles for this shoe to really break in and kind of have that same experience I had with the version 1 of the Superblast. I had to actually keep reminding myself that the Superblast 1 sucked at first and got a lot better because I really didn't want to run in the shoe when I got it. And I was already starting to look online for other training shoes because this was going to kind of be my do-it-all main go-to workhorse for my marathon. But I am happy to report that after 50 miles, the shoe did break in. Even with it broken in, the Flight Foam Turbo Plus and this overall midsole in general is still a firmer ride than you may be expecting from a max cushion running shoe. But for me, it's a good firmness where it still feels soft once it is truly broken in. So you can tell that it's actually protecting your legs over any distance that you're running. But the firmness allows the shoe to be snappy and responsive if you want to pick up the paces. I've pretty much done everything in the shoe. and the shoe works at almost every single pace that I've put it at. I do notice when I drop down more into like the 5 minute per mile pace that the shoe does start to fall apart a little bit. And I think that has more to do with just the overall stack height and kind of everything that's going on with the shoe. It is impressive that it is only 268 grams at that 10.5 for how much shoe you are getting, but I still feel like it does fall apart a little bit when you really try and pick up the pace in the shoe. The shoe feels really good at those easy paces as well. It turns over extremely well. And the midsole foam is still firm with a slightly soft feeling. I do feel that the faster the paces you pick up with the shoe, the better it does start to respond, and the more kind of lively the Flight Foam Turbo Plus becomes, as well as that Blast Plus Eco. Another thing I will note really quick when it comes to how the shoe feels when it runs, the shoe does have a pretty wide platform, so you don't have any real stability issues. You have a wide forefoot area, and then you also have a pretty wide heel. So there's really no stability issues with this shoe. All right, so next I'll get into who I believe the ASICS Superblast 2 is for. This is for anyone who had the version 1 and absolutely loved it and needs a new pair like I did. Like I said, I was at 400 miles on version 1. I probably could have stretched it to 600, but I really didn't want to do that. So being able to get the version 2 was a godsend because the version 1 is just non-existent anymore online. You can't buy it anywhere. So anyone who's looking for basically the version 1, the version 2, like I said, is pretty much the exact same shoe in terms of how it performs. Another person the ASICS Superblast 2 may be for is someone who's looking for a max cushion trainer that can pretty much do it all. They can do their easy runs, they can do their recovery runs, they can do their up-tempo work, they can take it on long runs, they could do long runs with marathon pace. You can pretty much do it all. You could even race in the shoe if you really wanted to just kind of stretch that budget as much as possible. This shoe might be the shoe for you. All right, and with that, who may this shoe not be for? I would say the ASICS Superblast shoe is not for someone who's looking for a max cushion trainer, but they want something extremely plush, mainly more for that recovery really slow. The Superblast 2 is just not for you. It's a pretty firm ride overall. There is some softness to it, but the overall midsole is pretty firm, so it may not be for you. The Superblast 2 is also not for someone who is looking for a shoe with a lot of stability. Like I said, the platform is pretty wide, so you are gonna get some stability with the overall shoe, but it's a high stack height. There's a good chance that if you're on uneven ground, you may get some rolling, especially if you're someone who overpronates or oversupinates when you run. You may just notice that the shoe may not be the most stable. You may want something with a little less stack height that's just a little lower to the ground and maybe has some more stability elements throughout the shoe. All right, and so with all of that out of the way, would I recommend the ASICS Superblast 2 for your running shoe rotation? For me, that's gonna be a resounding yes. Like I said, this is basically the version 1. So for me, it's gonna become one of my favorite running shoes, kind of like supersedes or takes the throne from the version 1. It's definitely like a top 3 of all time running shoe for me. For you, again, it'll really come down to if you were able to run in the version 1, did you like the version 1? If so, then yes, I would definitely recommend adding this to your shoe rotation. Are you looking for, like I said, a max cushion trainer that can kind of do it all? Then yes, I would add the shoe to your rotation. So if you are someone who loved the version 1 or wants to try the version 2 out, then I would recommend going out and picking up this pair for $200 at asics.com or wherever you can buy running shoes and trying it out in your running shoe rotation.